Braden is the man. I don't know how he does it. When most riders are thinking about buying a long travel 29er, this isn't the vision they have in their head. But sadly, it's what we spend most of our time doing. Thanks for tuning in for our latest episode of the Dissected series, where today we will be taking a look at the new high pivot Cannondale Jekyll. So when it comes to the new Cannondale Jekyll, there are a few key ingredients that make this bike tick. For this video, we actually sat down and talked with Scott Vogelmann, who is the product manager for Cannondale MTB. What are the key ingredients on the new Jekyll? We've got the high pivot Guidler pulley equipped 4-bar suspension design. We've got the gravity cavity, which is where the down tube splits and the rear shock is stationed. And we've also got the proportional response design philosophy, which is Cannondale's version of size-specific bike kinematics, geometry, etc. Each of these pivot points in the suspension will move, so the kinematic design does change. The leverage rate, axle path, all of that stuff changes depending on the size of the bike to give each sized rider the best feel possible. The Jekyll. Okay, it is a very talked about bike. There's a lot of cool stuff going on in that thing, man. And there's also some stuff that, as you probably know, gets a lot of discussions going, primarily around that open down tube and the, shock that's hidden in there, etc. Could you talk to us a little bit about that design element, why you put the shock there, and maybe any feedback you guys have had during testing?
Jekyll, with the entire project, the intention was to have a bike that performed incredibly, but also have a bike that people noticed. We had done a bunch of testing with layouts and such, and we knew from the beginning that we wanted a high pivot. The guys put this drawing up there, and it's like, yeah, this is sick, right? Like big heavy shocks, like 500, 600 gram shocks if you're running a coil, like nice and low in the frame. Like, heck yeah, I'll keep the center of gravity down. Like, there's some squeeze there. The challenge is like with this kind of layout, like you're not going to run the tube up and over the shock because then the shock's exposed. You run the tube down underneath the shock, well, the front tire's going to hit it as the suspension moves through its travel. So, well, what happens if you split the tube? And that was kind of one of those, you guys sure you want to do this? It's like, yeah, let's do it. And that kind of forced the next round of prototypes. So this is an existing Jekyll. At the time was the existing Jekyll. And the idea behind this was just to cut some holes in it, which we thought would be about the same size as Jekyll. Reinforce them with some plies. Took a couple different iterations on this to try to get to the point of, do we think we can make something that is stiff enough? Durability is an easier solution than creating something that's stiff enough. You can see like how rude this thing is. Like, it's pretty straight up. But this was like one of the iteration things that happened. And they were able to go through and prove that we can make a frame that will be stiff enough for riders in this category.
There are a few different reasons that Cannondale went with this design. One is to get mass low and centered on the bike, lowering that center of gravity. Also, it was just what they felt was the best place to get the ideal suspension tune and feel that they wanted. There are some open gaps here on both sides of that little protector plate, and that will allow anything that comes into the frame to filter out from the sides. Our ride time so far has been pretty short, but it's been a little wet today, and we're noticing that while there's a little bit of debris down in there, it is doing a pretty good job of coming out, and it still offers some protection from not having stuff flung up down at the bottom. So within each of those size-specific kinematics, Cannondale has opted to run a pretty straightly progressive shock tune or leverage rate. It is designed to be a safe and forgiving feeling ride. When we were talking with Scott, we asked about the intended application and desire of what Cannondale was trying to achieve with the bike. And he said that there were ways that they could have tuned the shock and the kinematic to better benefit riders on that ragged edge that were really looking for a race-only bike. However, having experience riding those types of bikes, if you're not riding 100% in a race run and you're just out for a casual ride with some friends or you're tired, those bikes tend to beat you up and be a little bit rougher. So they went with a pretty safe tune all around. It's something that aggressive race riders can tune a little bit up for race day, but they can also have a lot more fun day to day while they're out riding their normal casual trails. Also, further tunability can come from either an air shock, as you see here on our bike, or if you want to run a coil shock. Either shock design will work fine and just give a little bit of a different ride feel for riders who are looking for a little different experience on the trail. Now, obviously, with this new crop of long travel, high pivot 29ers, there is a very intended application, and that application is downhill speed, wide open trails, eating up big, gnarly, chunky terrain. That is what these bikes are designed for. That is what the Jekyll is designed for. With the 165 millimeters of travel out back and 170 up front, again, the geometry is confident and capable without being overkill. The amount of travel that you have on this bike is enough. So the bike will give you enough confidence if you're out in the bike park, shuttling downhill trails, but is also designed to be pedal friendly enough to get you out on long days when you want to go out and ride. Obviously, if you're looking at a bike like this, you're willing to make a compromise on the pedaling efficiency just because you prefer having that confidence and that capability when it comes to descending. In our initial riding and filming for this video, we've definitely felt that geometry is spot on. It does have a fairly short feeling cockpit once you're sitting down and pedaling. I think that seat tube angle, the reach, the cockpit, this short stem all give a very tight feel when you're climbing. You're not way out in front, leaning over. And, for better or worse, depending on what you prefer, we kind of like having a little bit of a tighter, shorter bike and feel like it makes it a little bit more playful, fun, and responsive. Similarly, the rear end felt pretty snappy around tight corners and some of the more awkward sections we have in the tight lava rock here in Bend. Again, something that we're not always huge fans of with the high pivot bikes is that extending wheelbase and this extending rear end specifically. But this bike was able to break loose and snap around even in these nice, wet, tacky conditions today. So we do like the stiffness and the length of that rear end and how we can get that bike to move around. It is poppy. It is very playful. We're looking forward to getting it out on a lot more rocky and chunky terrain to see how it handles there. For a 165, 170 29er, we were quite impressed with how lively, stiff the platform felt and how much you could pop and really kind of yank it out for some extended gaps and natural doubles out on the trail. So Cannondale has 3 options of the Jekyll going all the way down to a frame set. Now this model here comes with Fox Factory suspension, which is awesome, gives you the best of the suspension performance. However, they make smart moves like going with a GX Eagle drivetrain. You've got some nice code brakes on here. So it's kind of a nice blend of performance where you need it and a little bit of cost savings, maybe where it's not quite as important. So again, it's always easy to upgrade a shifter or a derailleur, and we'd rather see a lower price point to get into a bike but have the suspension and the quality components you need elsewhere. First off, beauty, right? The looks of this bike, to us, we're fans. The color changing paint is awesome. We like the uniqueness of having that shock down in there. Practicality of it will tell over the winter as more and more messy and sloppy conditions come about. It's a stiff frame. It is playful, quite poppy, nice support. It gets airborne very nicely. Something also worth noting is in our initial impressions, it seems like the pedaling and climbing on this bike is a little bit better than some other high pivot enduro bikes we've ridden. And I definitely think it's quieter than some others. Cannondale opted to go with a steel Guidler pulley wheel after doing a lot of testing on a really cool hardtail rig.
This was one of the ideas that the engineers came up with, and we specifically chose this frame because number one, it was cheap. Number two, is readily available, but most importantly, it's quite stout.
They were able to test drag, inefficiency, feedback, as well as noise on that idler pulley design. And by doing it on a hardtail, they were able to hook that bike up to a power meter, go out, do a big climb, do some long pedals, simply pull the chain off that Guidler and keep it routed around the chain ring because there's no rear suspension, and then go out and replicate that ride. And according to Cannondale and Scott Vogelmann, the amount of drag or inefficiency from that idler pulley on the hardtail test bike was negligible. So next up, Cannondale has agreed to let us give this bike away after we are done with our long-term testing of it. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment down below. We will announce the giveaway in a few months. You don't want to miss it, so subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss that video when it comes out. We've got a lot more great vids coming in the future. Thank you guys very much for watching. Thanks to Cannondale for helping us make this video happen, and of course, helping us give away a really cool bike to one of our subscribers. So we appreciate you watching. Hope to see you out on the trails.